officers and members of the public to take your seats, please. Councillors and visitors, please remember to switch your electronic devices to silent. Welcome everybody. I'd also like to welcome our viewers at home who are watching the meeting via the live stream. And we'll start by asking you all please to be outstanding, and if I could ask Deputy Mayor Proud if you could please read out the opening prayer. Thanks.
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. And Councillor Reid, would you like to read out the acknowledgement of country, please?
On behalf of the councillors, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation on which this meeting is taking place, and show respect to elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you. Without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited. You can take your seats, thanks. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. Takes us to item 1, which is the official opening, and ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting of the 4th of April 2023 open at 6:31 p.m. Attendance and apologies. We do have an apology tonight from CEO Stuart Jardine. Councillor Lagan is now here, so that's all good. Item 3, approved leave of absence. I have nil. 4, disclosure of interest, and those from the Community and Resources Committee have already been logged and they're on the board behind me. Councillors, are there any disclosures for this evening that need to be disclosed? Not currently, so keep an eye on the meeting. Put those in if there are. Item 5, petitions. We do have a couple, and I'll go first of all to Councillor Sandri, 5.1. Would you like to table the petition for traffic calming on Avocado Drive in Dinella, please?
Thank you. Traffic calming Avocado Drive. There are 51 verified signatures. And it reads, the last few months have seen an increase in hooning behaviour along Avocado Drive in Dinella in the middle of the night. Recently, a car ended up in the front yard of a house, narrowly missing the house and its sleeping occupants. We, the undersigned, request the City of Stirling install speed reduction measures along the full length of Avocado Drive.
Thank you. And 5.2, Councillor Hatton, would you like to table the petition?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I gladly present this petition on behalf of the Hamersley Ward residents. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the Council please consider replacing the existing playground located at the corner of Balcatta Road and Correniup Avenue to better child-friendly equipment. The existing equipment can be dangerous for children due to rope climbing, and younger children are currently unable to use the playground. Several parents in the area expressed the same concern that themselves and their children cannot utilise this playground, which is a shame given its beautiful location.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other petitions anyone wants to table tonight? If not, can I have a move and a seconder to accept those petitions? Move Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Perkoff. Councillor, can I just have a show of hands to accept those? Thank you. And that's unanimous. Move on to item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice. And those public question time responses from the last council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. 7 is public question time, so we'll move on to public question time. Have we got a run? One job, Mr Acting CEO. And we'll start with Dr Robert Madden, if you'd like to come forward, please. And just your name and suburb to start. And if you just press, if you press the button on the bottom right-hand corner.
Thank you, Mayor Owen. Robert Madden, Innaloo. Mayor Owen, are the City of Stirling aware of the local cat laws recently passed in the shires of Northam and Cubalin requiring cats to not be in a public place unless the cat is under effective control?
Thank you. Look, I'm not sure if all councillors are. I am. I've been made aware of it, but I'll ask Mr Quirk to provide an answer.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question, Dr Madden. Yes, the City is aware that there's a number of local government authorities currently reviewing their local laws. Importantly, we need to note that each community has got very different issues, needs and preferences that need to be considered. So whilst we are keeping an eye on what other local government authorities are doing, our decision making needs to be relevant for the City of Stirling.
Thank you. I am aware of the fact that our motions were recently passed to discuss this aforementioned issue by the City of Stirling, But will the City of Stirling commit to enacting local laws such as these themselves? The postscript that with in the outcome that the community can be shown to want such laws?
Yeah, appreciate that question, and also appreciate that, I guess, this was raised at the electors' general meeting. The motions from that meeting will come back to council, and the meeting's in May, and that's certainly up to council to deliberate on and decide where they want to take that.
And lastly, I ask, are the City of Stirling aware of the current parliamentary petition seeking an urgent amendment to the Cat Act, and will the City of Stirling support it and offer their support by signing it as individuals?
Oh, and again, I'd have to say, you'd have to ask each council. I'm sure you get some support from certain councillors, and there's no problem with you asking individual councillors, in another forum or by email to see if they would support it.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Owen.
Arthur Mitsillis, please.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors and officers of Stirling. The questions are very short, Mr Mayor, but there requires a tiny bit of a preamble to put them in context. This preamble comes from an extract from Hansard from the State Parliament, and it's to do with the discussion of the JDAPs. And this was shown on the ABC TV, if all of you were privileged to see it. And this is only a tiny section. And this is Mr McGowan talking. Just so that the members knows, the DAPs have on them representatives from the local council. When the member says they have no say, it is factually wrong. They have local council representatives on them, but they also have technical advisors and take account of the rules. They do not just listen to the loudest complainer, and that is the difference. I do not know whether the member has been to some local council meetings. I started my career in politics in local council. I know what happens. A few people come along and complain, and lots of councillors go to water over it. We have to have processes that stop that from occurring and stop the stymieing of good projects and developments to create jobs and housing. On having read that, these are the questions. Do councillors agree that Mr McGowan's statement fairly applies to them in the discharge of their duties?
Thank you. And probably, as I stated before, you'd have to ask individual councillors outside of this meeting if they agree. Personally, whilst I understand the intent of what was said, I don't agree with what happens. The elected members of this council who sit on JDAP are elected to represent their community but in an unbiased way and provide judgment. But they're also there to take account of the rules. It's not just the technical experts.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, but I wasn't talking about the council representatives on JDAP.
No, I understand what you're asking. Look, I don't agree myself. I don't agree with the statement fairly applies to them. I think council, it's easy to legislate to the lowest common denominator. And I can't talk for what Mr Gowan's experience was in his council, but I believe our councillors are able to.
I understand your position in representing councillors, but none of them have said anything. None of them have said that doesn't apply to me in the work I do in council.
I'm sorry, you can't address councillors during question time.
No, I understand that, but that's what's there in front of you. The second question. Do councillors agree that Mr McGowan's statement fairly describes the residential ratepayers that are their constituents and whom they represent as, to quote, a few people come along and complain?
Again, I can only speak for myself as you're addressing me. No, I don't. Look,
but aren't I putting questions to council tonight, Mr Mayor?
Yeah, and we can respond. I can get councillors happy to respond to you in writing, but each councillor can't respond to you during question time.
I look forward to receiving responses, Mr Mayor. The third question. Will councillors pass a motion condemning this representation of themselves and their constituents as described by Mr McGowan?
And again, thank you for that question. That would be up to councillors to pass that motion.
Well,
they've heard you. They've taken it on board. That would be up to them. I can't tell them to pass a motion or to put forward a motion, but that's entirely up to them.
I can see the JDAPs on steroids is going to really make a big difference to your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Deirdre Allen. Good evening.
Good evening. Mayor, councillors, Deirdre Allen of Corbinia. This is regarding the Walcott Street Adair Parade development. I noticed this morning the graffiti had been removed from the illegal Adair Parade advertising hoarding, which is an eyesore. The hoarding still shows a 5+ storey building, so the developer is able to move themselves and pay money to clean up the graffiti, but not take it down. Well, the graffiti did lower the whole tone of the area, and they wouldn't want that for their as yet unapproved expensive apartments. Guess that the apartments don't have any affordable housing in there and are probably $1 million plus. Right on the main road, noisy and fumy. Yuck, I wouldn't want to live there, and I live in Corbinia. The graffiti didn't look very good in the media photo either that appeared in the paper. I just wondered, if I put a sign up that size on my corner residential block, I bet Stirling Council would have ordered me to remove it immediately after neighbours' complaints, as people have complained here. It's as though there's a lot going on behind the scenes, not in the public domain. It seems like the developers are being supported while they don't follow the rules. Surely Stirling hasn't approved the sign yet, because a decision isn't going to be made on whether the development's allowable until July. Isn't it about time it came down?
Thank you for that question. Mr Rodich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks, Ms Allen, for the question. Ms Allen, as you're aware, the City has received a retrospective application for the sign. The officers have carried out that assessment, and that assessment has revealed that the sign doesn't satisfy the policy objectives, so the City will be writing to the applicant to either give him the opportunity to amend, modify the sign, or if not, we will refuse the sign and request for that sign to be removed.
Well, thank you. That's great news. Thank you to the City. Also, I was here on the 23rd of March, and having read the agenda, I got a lot more information about this whole development and regarding the zoning and planning. And they apparently, in the agenda of the meeting, there's supposed to be a legal covenant over the area, which I didn't realise, and I don't know anything about that. Excuse my voice, I've been losing it. The only thing that seems to comport with the planning regulations covering this area is there are enough spaces for the residents' parking. Non-complying with the regulations as written, the earth fills bigger, setbacks, number of stories, double the density, permitted use of the local centre, which it doesn't seem to be a local centre anymore, but waivers have been given out like confetti for this development. For example, Lot 8, which is the rear of the development, it's zoned R60, which is limited to 3 stories of medium density residential in the spirit of the whole development. On Clem Lane, the townhouses are above the ground level as the car park is not wholly underground, but about 1.5 metres above. So in fact, the townhouses that we think are two stories are 2.5 stories above the existing road, which is going to make them far taller than the adjoining 2-storey existing townhouses. But half of the lot in the proposed development is 4 to 5 stories anyway. And then Lot 2, which is the front piece on Walcott, is zoned local centre, which has a limit, usually, of 3 stories, and no residential permitted, no bars permitted. And in the plans, we can see this is not the case. There is a bar, residential, and 5+ stories throughout. In fact, you could say it stretches to 6 stories on Clem Lane, because there is a mezzanine floor located within the gymnasium. So if you count actual floor and headroom, that makes it 6 stories. Lot 2 is no way in the
Sorry,
definition
Ms Allen, I do need to get you to ask
of
a
a local
question.
centre. Okay, I suggest that the whole development would look very different if it had been constructed in accordance, proposed in accordance with the regulations, and I'm suggesting the council planners list said the development is consistent with the desired built form outcomes of the area. Really? The actual built form...
I'm sorry, I do need you to ask a question, Ms Allen. You're deputising for a development, against a development.
Yes, I am.
But
with
it's,
the
it's
ratepayers
public
who
question
actually pay.
time, so I need you to ask a question of us, please.
Okay, my question is, it said, the planners say the development is consistent with the desired built form outcomes for the area, but it isn't. It doesn't. It looks like the Regent's Park Mosque. If you look that up on the internet, you'll see. It doesn't look like Mount Lawley.
Miss Allen,
And
I'm going to have to ask you to ask a question, please.
I'm asking why your developers, your council planners, said the development is consistent with the desired built form outcomes from the area.
Thank you.
How can that be? Why is it? Who desires 4 and 5 metre?
Mr. Rodich, could you provide an answer, please? And while that answer is coming, could we perhaps someone take a glass of water to Miss Allen?
No, it won't go away. Sorry,
You're okay?
I'm fine. Yeah,
Okay,
it won't go. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got a cough.
Okay, Mr. Rodich.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Ms Allen, for the question. Ms Allen, I won't go into the full details in the Responsible Authority report. You've probably definitely read that. Look, the city's assessment concluded that the development is compatible with the envisaged character of the area, with the taller elements of the proposal located to Walcott Street. In our local planning strategy, it talks about development intensification along urban corridors, activity corridors, which Walcott Street is, and we believe the height, bulk and scale of this development was acceptable.
So it needs to look like the Middle East.
Miss Allen, your third question, please.
At the council meeting I attended, the previous council meeting, a motion was put up by Councillor Ferranti and accepted by the council that the whole development should be kept to 3 stories. And this was supposed to go forward to JDAP. Is there something going on that the public doesn't know? There was certainly enough time for the councillors' planners to include the council's resolution in their submission to JDAP. But it just didn't seem to be included. Well, obviously, parking and rubbish removal are easier to fix than lopping 2 stories off the profits of the developers. Why didn't this get submitted to JDAP by Stirling Council planners in accordance with what the council resolved and not become one of the conditions of approval? Was it an oversight? An oversight wouldn't be a good enough excuse for such a critical issue. Please, can you explain?
Yeah, and the simple answer here will be a timing issue in terms of the city's RAR has to be submitted prior to that council meeting. We don't get to determine the time frame, and I understand it's not ideal from a community point of view, but it's out of Stirling's hands, and that's why we put it as an addendum. But I'll get Mr. Rodich to clarify.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Ms Allen. As pointed out by the Mayor, Ms Allen, the Responsible Authority report was due before the council meeting. Following that, the RAR was still submitted to council, and that resolution of council was provided to the JDAP, and it was included in the agenda. It's up for the JDAP members and the presiding members to, shall we say, foreshadow that motion put forward by council, being the Responsible Authority. It's at their decision, so that resolution was definitely provided by the officers to the JDAP. There was no mistake made.
Fortunately, I wasn't at JDAP, but that's what I heard from other people that were there, that nothing happened. Thank you.
I can assure you it's there. Thank you. We're at 15 minutes, so I do rule to extend question time to allow further questioning, and I'll ask Lynn Springham to come forward, please. Thank you.
Lynn Springham from Jundana. Good evening, Mr Mayor and councillors and staff and the gallery. The Director of Infrastructure has confirmed that out of the 69 trees cut down on the Mount Lawley Golf Course, only 12 had received approval from the Manager of Parks and Sustainability. At the 21st of March meeting, the Director of Infrastructure stated that the city's understanding is that some trees in the past were removed without formal approval being granted, which is a matter that the city has taken up with the club. The requirement to seek formal approval before any trees are removed in the future has been made clear and a proper process has been established. Is the city saying that MLGC were unclear whether or not approval from the city was required? Which year did the city establish the proper process with MLGC? And does that mean that all prior tree removals were not formally approved?
Thank you. Mr Murphy?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, and thanks for the question. There's quite a bit of detail in that question, and I wasn't the director at the time. Some of that happened, so I've not got the answers at my fingertips. So what we'll do is I'll take that question on notice and we'll provide something in writing.
These were just your answers from the last question time, Mr Murphy, yeah? At the March 21st council meeting, I asked a question. A clearing permit was required for the vegetation that was removed to put in the 19th hole. Has the city overseen and or assessed the subsequent clearing that has taken place? Was the Department of Water Environmental Regulation consulted and permits given? The Director of Infrastructure, Mr Murphy, advised that under the EPA Act, native vegetation does not include vegetation that is intentionally sown, planted or propagated. The trees removed by the Mount Lawley Golf Club were planted by the club and or were non-native tree species, so these do not require a permit from the state government to remove. Other long-term members have concerns of the vegetation being cleared throughout areas on the course. So I'm asking just to get some clarification, who has made the determination that these areas need not be assessed by the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, given the area to develop the 19th hole was, or that they have been intentionally planted or that they are not native vegetation? How did the city know that the trees that were removed were planted by the club, or if they were non-native? Is there a documented evidence of the status of these areas prior to the clearing?
Thank you for that question. And again, I'm guessing the response will be the same. I think it's better with that one if we get all that detail and respond to you in writing.
Fine. Thank you. Is Council aware that the Arbor Carbon Report of October 2020, commissioned by the Mount Lawley Golf Club, under the heading Recommended Tree Removal on page 33, it states, "It is important to note that a permit may be required prior to removal of any trees on the golf course with an assessment of the impact of clearing principles under Part 5, Division 2 of the West Australian Environmental Protection Act 1986. And in 2019-2020 financial year, Mount Lawley Golf Club spent $46,000 on tree removals. And in 2020-2021 financial year, they spent $76,000 on tree removals."
Thank you. Mr Murphy?
Yeah, through Mr Mayor. I wasn't aware of those figures, I must admit, so I suppose that's the simple answer to that. In terms of the statement that comes from the report, again, I assume that's correct, but I haven't got the report in front of me, so I can't be sure. And the last thing I'll say is that to Mrs Eames Springham is that the opportunity to meet with officers has been made, and if you want to meet with officers, we can deal with some of these questions perhaps a little bit easier. So just to reiterate that offer.
Thank you, Mr Murphy.
Thank you. Angie Cassian?
Angie Cassian, Mount Lawley. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public gallery. My first question. On the public question time submission form, it states, please enter the report item number or subject matter as the mandatory requirement when completing the form. Why has the subject topic and or report number been omitted when the minutes are published in the table of contents under the heading of public question time, as the words public question times are repeated again on each line? This could easily be abbreviated to PQT with the person's name, the relevant subject matter, for ease of reference and better transparency by the city.
Thank you. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. The city's minutes comply with the requirements of the regulations to include a summary of the question asked and a summary of the answer in the minutes. This is the way they've been formatted by the city. It is a matter that we are happy to look into and see if there's a simple way that we can include that information.
Thank you. My second question. Trees have been damaged and some have died since the implementation of Mount Lawley Golf Club's Greens Replacement Program, as there is no tree protection zone around each tree within close proximity of the new greens and bunker reconstruction areas. How will the city ensure that each tree's health will be maintained by the club during reconstructions of the 8 new greens commencing in July 2023, and will before and after photographs be taken, as well as a 3-metre tree protection zone be placed around all trees that are within or near any development or construction areas where heavy-duty equipment will be used?
Thank you for that question. And look, I think it's probably aligns with some of the questions that have previously been asked. Officers have committed to ensuring that no trees are damaged. Each one will be assessed on its merit, but certainly there'll be before and after photos, and officers will be inspecting the trees.
Thank you. And Council's YouTube meeting of the 15th of February 2022, the then Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Michael Littleton, stated, "I'm not quite sure why all those trees don't have tree number identified on them. For safety reasons, this is an ongoing concern when reporting of any dangerous or damaged trees that could cause injury, as there is no tag with the tree ID number on it. When will the city follow through and instruct Mount Lawley Golf Club to display tree ID numbers on all trees located on the Mount Lawley Golf Course that have been identified by Arbor Carbon in the 2020 Arboricultural Survey and Risk Assessment Report?"
Thank you for that. I'll see if we've got the information. Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure there's an absolute ability for the city to require each tree to be tagged, but the best way I can answer the question is that we'll give you something in writing. I'll check with the manager of parks and we'll be able to answer the specific questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lewis Moncrief? Thanks, sir. Just your name and suburb to get you started, and then your questions.
Okay, thanks, Mayor and councillors. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Lewis Moncrief of Corbinia. My question is just regarding the development at Adair Parade in Corbinia. I've got my own personal views on this and just seek sort of your opinion, Mayor. And it would be, does the council think that a 5-storey or a 3-storey building is in keeping with the current building size and heritage of Corbinia and Menora?
Thank you. And obviously this came to council at the last council meeting. The councillors voted on that and put forward as part of the recommended authority report, the RAR, that the development be refused, and one of those bases was on the bulk and scale.
Yeah, okay. The second question would be, at the last JDAP meeting I attended, the most recent one, why wasn't the developer Willing Property given specifics to the letter of the law around the number of car bays required and the width of the lane required to meet the specific law abiding guidelines? And I suppose the subtext would be that there was a lady who attended who had to foot the bill of an $80,000 carport that she wanted to build out of tin, but had to build out of brick and tile, right? So she got the letter of the law, but I didn't see specifics being driven to the developer.
Sure. Mr. Rodich?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, for the question, and Mr. Moncrief. Mr. Moncrief, the developer was told of the car parking requirements. The development actually complied with the car parking number. What it didn't comply was the allocation to the commercial activities on the site. In addition, I think you asked a question about the laneway width, and the developer was provided the details from the city required to widen the laneway, and that laneway, that widening was provided on the development site. So those details were passed through. Look, we've talked about this development quite a lot recently. The letter of the law is probably not that exact science. Planning's performance-based, so we do can consider things which, shall we say, most community would don't comply with the letter of the law.
Okay, thanks for your answer. So how many car bays are required for a 33 room apartment?
Mr. Rodich?
From memory, Mr. Moncrief, as this is a mixed-use development, required 70 car bays and it provided 70 car bays, but we were not happy with the allocation of those car bays.
Okay, and for thank you for the answer. And for the commercial properties, how many are required?
Mr. Rodich?
Through the chair, 25 bays.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions.
Okay, sorry, I've just got one more.
I'm sorry, I can't allow any more. We're happy to take it though if you want to provide it in writing, but it's three
Okay.
questions.
No, I've only asked two.
You've had four. I'm sorry, sir.
Are you serious? Are you serious? I mean,
Look, we're happy if you provide it in writing. We'll make sure it forms part of the minutes.
Okay.
But in fairness to everyone, there is three questions.
Rightio. Okay. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Grace Hummerston, please. And just your name and suburb to start.
Grace Hummerston from Corbinia. Good evening, councillors. I've got three questions, mainly in relativity to the development on Adair Parade in Corbinia. If this development goes ahead, is the council going to put any provisions in place to protect the health of our community and also the environmental issues caused by the contaminated soil on this former petrol station site?
Thank you for that question. Mr. Rodich?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Muston, for the question. The site has been remediated and it is not on the Department of Water and Environment Regulation Contaminated Sites Register.
Okay, thank you. Regardless of whether this development is going to be approved or not, is the City of Stirling committed to slowing down the already problematic traffic issue along Adair Parade with the use of speed bumps, chicanes, roundabouts, etc., to create a slow street zone as the town of Vincent has implemented around their schools and their rat runs in their neighbourhoods?
Thank you for that question. Look, it'd be premature to say we're committed to it. Certainly at the last meeting when questions were asked, officers did indicate that once the approval or non-approval of this development goes ahead, the city would mitigate any of the issues around there with traffic in terms of conditioning the approval, putting conditioning on as appropriate, but also would then assess it, the development pre and post the development, and then deal with the residents and work out if it's needed.
Okay, thank you. Question 3, is it common to be able to subdivide blocks, such as the one that's just been subdivided across the road from me on the corner of Adair Parade and Ardros Crescent, by allowing residents to change the zoning in areas where the zoning is R10, as I've just discovered recently that the previously 38 Adair Parade, which was once the Wilner residence, which was an Art Deco home that was built in 1936, I believe. It is now 38A and 38B.
Thank you. I'll see if we've got any information. Mr. Rodich?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Thompson, I don't have details on that property, but subdivision is guided by the zoning of the site. Look, I'll have to have a look into what the zoning of that site at 38, was it Adair Parade?
Yeah, 38,
and I can provide that information in writing to you.
Okay,
but it's not for the landowner to say what the zoning is. The city and through the West Australian Planning Commission and the Minister determine zonings of properties. But I can come back to you on that.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your questions.
Thanks for your time.
Peter Ellis. Evening, Mr. Ellis.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors, hard-working staff and fellow ratepayers. Peter Ellis from Careen. Following your instructions to find the information about Mr. Jardine's trip to America on the City of Stirling's website, I've looked, but I can only find lots of buildings being demolished and being rebuilt, but nothing that relates to the information and knowledge from 11 American conference trips. So can you please tell me where else to go, in relation to the question, of course?
Well done, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Blanchard.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a section on our website under Register for Public Viewing, which lists employee conference attendance. It lists the details of conferences attended by employees from 2016 to 2023 and includes information regarding the person attending the conference, purpose, dates and costs attributed to travel and conference registration.
And we're happy to send you the link.
Thank you. I must rephrase that question. In the annual report of 21-22 on page 36, it states verbatim, to ensure that our community has the opportunity to have their say in a variety of ways that are kept informed about important milestones. Can you please tell me why Mr. Jardine's reports are kept secret?
Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jardine's reports are not kept secret. They are shared with the Mayor and the councillors, as Mr. Jardine is required to do under his current contract. So both the City of Stirling and the CEO are complying with their contractual obligations in relation to these reports.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Dear, what a name. May I draw your attention to page 13 of the annual report, 2021-22, where it states under the heading Service Commitment. And it states verbatim, be open, honest and accountable. And ask how retaining Mr. Jardine's report on his conference attendance in America meets this statement.
Mr. Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Ellis, and hopefully you'll find this answer a bit better than the other ones.
Good.
Council is currently recruiting a new CEO, and in doing so will have the opportunity to consider the terms under which that CEO is engaged. So if the council and the CEO agree that the CEO's conference attendance reports are to be made public, then in the future the CEO's conference reports will be made public.
Very nicely done. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Simon Wheeler.
Good evening, councillors, staff, gallery and brightly coloured cat people here. My name's Simon Wheeler from Scarborough.
Cat people.
In a good way, I think. Mayor Owen, I'm quite disappointed by the recommendation for item 12.1 tonight because it's changed. Because I was getting ready to sing you a couple of lines of God Save the Queen by the bard John Lydon, otherwise known as Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. But since
you may still have an opportunity, Mr. Wheeler.
Excellent. Well, I did see there's an alt rec, and that's a bit of that's another matter altogether. So anyway, but I've lost my thread now. You see, there you go.
You were talking about King Charles.
Oh, no, I was talking about King Charles. No, I was talking about the Queen. No, I'm a bit of a monarchist. But since I couldn't do my singing, I was going to ask something, like, is it scones or scones, or is it jam first, then cream, or cream first, then jam? But I know it's jam first. But heretics think otherwise, but we are in Australia. But there's no relevance to those questions, and Mayor Owen, with respect to them, there's no relevance to this motion, seriously, in Australia in 2023, to be having a high tea for the King, or definitely the renaming, the potentially divisive renaming of a room to honour the Queen. And again, I come as a monarchist here. I don't think it's relevant. And I think what might be relevant is our new King is a well-known tree hugger. And I think it would be much better, would the council not consider planting a couple of trees to the King and the Queen and ex-Queen with a couple of plaques on them, because they're much less likely to get chopped down by developers then.
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Wheeler. Look, that item is on the agenda this evening, as you're well aware, and that will be for council to decide. Either way, if it does go ahead, you are still welcome to attend.
Oh, I meant to get that in. I didn't get my invite. That's what I was going to say. Sorry. Right, Mayor Owen, sorry, I have a question which I've already asked 2 or 3 times before, but I'm going to have to ask it again because I still haven't got an answer, or in my opinion, I haven't got an answer. Under Section 267 of the Land Administration Act 1997, not only is it an offence to clear or remove any plant, whether alive or dead, from Crown land, with a penalty of $10,000 per instance, I assume that's per tree, but it could be per chopping season, but also that additional penalties can be applied as compensation for reinstatement or rehabilitation of Crown land. And I know that trees carry an intrinsic and financial value as far as council's concerned. So there's a lot of money there. Given the admission by the city at the council meeting the 21st of March 2023 that 57 trees have been removed from the Mount Lawley Golf Club without any formal authorisation from the city, that's my understanding from the answers we have had, the city is a delegated managing body of the MGLC lease for the A-Class Reserve. Is the city going to be taking the appropriate steps as required by law to identify who or what body was responsible for the breach of the Act and notify all relevant authorities of these offences for investigation and prosecution?
Thank you. Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A careful reading of the Land Administration regulations will show that the Mount Lawley Golf Club Reserve is not included in those for the purpose of those offences.
In the Land Administration Act it is. Are you talking about the Environmental Protection Act?
Mr Blanchard.
Mr Wheeler, a written response previously provided states that the Land Administration regulations exempt certain types of reserves from those provisions.
No, the written response gave...
Your third question, Mr Wheeler.
Well, okay, here's the third question, because it's a summary. This is the fourth time I've been asking questions about this. I'm not the only one. Lots of people are asking questions. You've said, Mayor Owen, that the city's been entirely transparent and accountable on this issue, but at the end of the day, someone's chopped down the trees. I think we all agree that they shouldn't have been chopped down. I honestly believe that the city doesn't necessarily know who authorised who chopped those trees down, so I'm not throwing any accusations at anyone, which is why I had to modify my last question to avoid the defamation. Should we not take that $5,000 if we're not going to plant the trees and we're not going to get me jam and scones or scones? Could that $5,000 not go towards an investigation, external investigation, to look at this whole the Mount Lawley Golf Club tree removal issue, so everybody knows what was happening, when it was happening, and why it was happening?
Thank you. Mr Blanchard.
The allocation of council resources from one function to another would be a matter for council to consider and decide.
That's why I asked the Mayor, Mr Blanchard, with respect, and the question was for council, Mayor, and for you.
And thank you, and your question's been heard, and councillors have heard you. It would be entirely up to council if they wish to spend money to do further investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Leisha Jack. Thank you. Your name and suburb?
Good evening, Mayor. Leisha Jack from Karrinyup. Good evening, councillors, members of the gallery. My questions pertain to the response given in public question time by the Director of Infrastructure at the council meeting on the 21st of March 2023, where he said that 69 trees had been removed from the Mount Lawley Golf Club from their leased reserved Crown land. 57 of those were removed without permission from the city, which was a violation of their lease. So my first question in relation to that is, Mr Mayor, are you and councillors aware that the Mount Lawley Golf Club told their members in various communications and verbally on numerous occasions over the past couple of years that they had permission from the city, which they often refer to as the council, which is fair enough, a lot of people do that, for all their tree removals? That's what they've been telling their members. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not, Ms Jack.
Okay. What actions will the city be taking to address the breach of their lease and this misinformation they've given their members? That's the question. What action will the city be taking against the breach of their lease and the misinformation they have given their members?
Thank you for that question. Look, it's probably aligns with some of the other questions that have happened tonight. What I can't tell you is what the information they've given to their members. That's for a club to decide that part of it. In terms of if we're talking about the trees, those particular trees, you have a commitment that we will work out the dates of all of those trees and give you an answer as to what action will be taken.
Okay, thank you. In mid-2021, when members from the Mount Lawley Golf Club started asking questions of the city about disappearing trees from the golf course, because the club would not provide answers to their questions, is it safe to assume that city staff with their sophisticated aerial imagery and data mapping software that shows annual decreases and increases in tree canopy cover and vegetation on any property within the city, and considering that they had the staff had the Mount Lawley Golf Course arbor-carbon tree survey with all the GPS locations of the trees, and multiple site inspections were carried out, that staff would have been aware that 58 trees had been removed, around 58 trees had been removed without permission for some time?
Thank you for that question. We will investigate that and respond to you in writing, Ms Jack.
Okay. I think others have asked my third question, so I have another one.
I'm pretty sure that was 3.
No, that was 2.
That was. I must be going crazy.
Mm.
Miss Jack, it's the last one, so we'll let you do it. But,
okay.
But I'm going to go back and watch this.
Okay. So,
and I'm going to count.
The city is seemingly supportive of whatever the club is trying to do. I was just wondering if you, Mr Mayor, or tonight, if you can please tell me why, because there are many ways of designing a golf course. You can have a forested parkland course, as you're probably aware. You can have a more barren, coastal style, Melbourne Links style sandbelt course, Scottish style courses that have a lot less trees. It really is a choice. It's a want. It's not a need to do all the tree removal that they're doing. It's a design choice. Have you sought outside expertise to actually determine whether it's necessary or whether it's just a frivolous want on the part of the golf course? So what are the reasons you think, the technical reasons why it's a good idea? And perhaps...
So the simple answer there is I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. As a council's
Okay.
role isn't to individually look at each tree. Certainly around this table, I can speak for myself. I haven't got the expertise in determining that for each tree.
Mm.
I think our role is to set a framework up. We have our urban forest strategy. We're not perfect at it. We've got a team of experts under the staff who do this on a daily basis.
Golf experts?
Yes, many of them are in that field.
Really? Who?
Yes. Thanks for the question, Ms Jack. But they are, and that's what they do on a daily basis. We deal with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trees. No, it's not about golf, Ms Jack.
No, this is about golf. This is, they want to remove these for
I
the
can't
game.
enter debate with you, Ms Jack.
Mm.
I've answered your question.
Okay. So the city has golf experts.
We actually do. We've got one sitting behind you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions. And
All
he'll be
right.
happy to chat to you afterwards about golf, if that's what you'd like to talk about.
I'll be happy to talk to him about golf.
Thank you, Ms Jack. Now, that's the last one I... And we've got a golf expert around the table. He's pretty handy. That is the last question I have. Have I missed anyone in the gallery? If not, I will move on. Thank you, everyone, for your patience in getting through those. And we'll now move on to 8, application for leave of absence. Are there any applications for leave of absence this evening? Thanks, councillors. I'll go on to confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council, 21st of March? Move Councillor Criado, seconder Councillor Hatton. And a show of hands, please, councillors, to accept those minutes. Thank you. And against? Sorry, no, well, it's a vote. What is, you want a question on the minutes? A quick question, councillor.
A number of times I've put up about questions on notice which don't get answered, and policies are supposed to come, and then I'm advised that the answer will come, but the answer never comes. So how can we support the minutes and agree with the minutes with, one, they don't answer the question, and secondly, when they say they're going to give us the information, they don't give us the information. And I take clearly the one about the double view Bennett Park, which you, Mr Mayor, you also questioned, you also asked for comments on, but we never actually got the actual report. So how can we actually support the minutes when things like that are still missing?
Thank you. That's
so
entirely.
There's my question. I can vote against it because we're still not getting the questions
If you've got,
answered.
Councillor, all I can say, if you've got a specific, you're welcome to vote against it and outline the specific question that hasn't been answered, but I don't think that's not what the minutes are. The minutes aren't verbatim.
That is true. They're not verbatim, but the questions that are asked, and you also agreed that the minutes, that when they didn't answer the
Let's be
question
careful how
we
you
asked.
say I agree.
Well, I'm sure I can find the tape that said you agreed with me that we didn't have the information on Better Park.
But Councillor, you're
That's
talking.
an example.
Councillor, I'm not happy having this debate right now. We're about to move the confirmation of the minutes of the 21st of March. It is nothing to do with Bennett Park club rooms.
Well, the last lot of questions on notice, which I had before,
No, but this-
were about
we're-
policies which didn't come.
We're
These
talking
questions on notice here.
Councillor,
the
take a
answer's not
seat,
there.
thanks. Councillor, take a seat.
Okay, I'm asking for clarification. That's my question.
On the particular minutes of the 21st of March, on this minutes that we're about to approve.
The policy that I asked for with regard to how people get approved and how people get banned in the city, that wasn't put into the actual agenda. That wasn't put into the minutes. It wasn't followed up. So how can we sit there and support the minutes when those
I think you're talking
questions
about,
aren't
are you talking about tonight's meeting?
in the last one? They weren't in the last lot of minutes, and they said they were going to put them in the next lot of minutes.
Take a seat and I'll get clarification.
They're still not there.
Particularly on the 21st of March, were there any questions on notice that weren't responded to, Mr Blanchard?
Answers to the
Councillor, I'm not
question on
talking to you,
notice.
Councillor.
No.
Thank you. Yep. Mr Blanchard, were there any questions on notice for the 21st of March that weren't responded to?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There were questions asked by members of which due notice was given at page 347. And a confirmation that no questions by members of which due notice was given were asked at the last council meeting.
So it's irrelevant to that particular item. I understand you've got a point about this, but it's irrelevant with what we're about to do. So this is a procedural motion that we do each meeting, confirming the previous minutes of the meeting. So I will now put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. And against? Councillor Rhea is voting against. I'll now go on to item 10, which is announcements by the presiding member. I do have one quick one. Just a quick one. As many of you know, in the last week or so, there's a fantastic event, the Australian Surf Lifesaving Championships, huge success, and I want to congratulate the staff on that. But this isn't about that. It's about one of those other events that happen in the city that maybe didn't get as much publicity. So on Sunday just gone, the Balga Futsal Club won the State Futsal League for the first time in their history against Rockingham with a winning goal in the last few seconds. I'd like to acknowledge our very own Councillor Dudek was part of that team. He was a goalkeeper. He did Sterling proud and saved one of the penalty goals just before half-time. Well done to you and the team and the Balga Futsal Club. Right. Item 11. Everyone's going, he's gone off script again. Item 11, unresolved business from previous meetings. I have now on to 12 reports and recommendations of committees. Councillors, we'll now move on to the Community and Resource Committee items. There are some items, I think, that need to be pulled out. Councillors, and there's some that you'll note that if there is discussion on the tender side of them, they will have to be talked about behind closed doors. I'm conscious that I believe 12.1 GOV1, much to Mr Wheeler's delight, will be pulled out on page 46. And I'm also aware, I think, the 12.1 8.3, the waste to energy, will be pulled out. Are there any other items, councillors, you wish to pull out this evening? Councillor Kristovich?
12.1 ES1.
12.1 ES1, the coastal hazard mitigation works, pulled out. Thank you. Are there any other? Councillor Farrelly?
12.1, I don't know if you've said it, GOV1?
Yes, that's been pulled
Oh,
out.
I'm sorry, okay. And
12.1 ES1 on page 18, 12.1 GOV1 on 46, and 12.1 8.3 on page 52 are the ones I have to be pulled out. Thank you, councillors.
have you got 8.3, sorry, Mr Mayor? 12.1 and
The
8.
third time, 12.1 8.3, waste to energy on page 52.
Oh, I'll get a hearing aid.
Thank you, councillors. I will now go to the first one of those, 12.1 ES1, the coast councillors. Coastal hazard mitigation works. Councillor Hatton is chair of that committee. If you've got a motion for us.
Yep, I've just got to find it. Just after all those outs there.
Page 18.
Yep, page 18.
Just move the
Okay.
committee recommendation, Councillor Hatton.
Yep. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
It's a committee recommendation.
Committee
Thank you.
recommendation.
And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Migdale. And is there anyone opposed? Councillor Kristovich, you're opposed, or you've got a question? Is it an easy one that won't require debate? Are you...
Very easy.
Let's just hear it and we'll just see if they're prepared to accept before we enter debate.
Thank you very much. As we know, words matter, and so what I want to do is just change the word considered in the second part of the motion where it says noting that both are considered. I want to change that to submitted, because we're talking about submitting something for federal government disaster relief funding application. So I just want to make sure that we're clear at the committee meeting. We talked about submitting both of them and doing reports for both of them, as opposed to the word consider, which means it may not get up.
No, I appreciate that. Councillor Hatton and Councillor Migdale, are you just happy to accept that amendment as part of the substantive motion? Save us going into debate over something like that. That's great. It's been accepted, Councillor Kristovich. So I'm happy if there's no one opposed to this motion, we can now put that to the vote. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors.
Done.
Thanks for that, Councillor Perkov. Clarification. We'll now go to item 12.1 GOV1 on page 46. Councillor Hatton as chair of the committee.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to pass this over to the alternative, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mayor. And we have, we're rhyming tonight, and we have the committee, the alternate recommendation on the board, which was actually my notice of motion originally.
Thank you.
Which was changed through committee.
That was my understanding from the committee that this would come up. So happy to accept that motion. And if we can get a seconder for that motion, anyone? Councillor Dudek is seconding that motion. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Farrelly, you're opposed. I will ask Councillor Migdale if you'd like to open debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Queen Elizabeth II was the monarch of the United Kingdom from 1952 till her passing in 2022. During her reign, the British Empire went through a process of decolonisation, which resulted in the independence of many former colonies. As a figurehead and symbol of the British state, the Queen played an important role in promoting a more positive and respectful relationship with former colonies and Commonwealth countries alike. The Queen acknowledged the painful legacy of colonialism and sought to build bridges between former colonies and the UK. Whilst the role of the Queen in this process was primarily symbolic, her efforts to build bridges and acknowledge the legacy of colonialism have helped to promote a more positive relationship between the UK and colonies past and present. Having been crowned at the age of 25, Queen Elizabeth dedicated all of her life to public service, and she did so with poise and compassion. Her public role meant that she was afforded no rights to privacy that we all take for granted. Whether it was the breakdown of her children's marriages or any number of scandals over the years, she endured with her head held high. Throughout her lifetime, she was committed to many charitable organisations and philanthropic causes. She led by example and showed us all that change was not to be feared but embraced. As a woman, I was inspired and motivated by her dedication to service, grace and assurance. She was a moral measuring stick of sorts and a reflection of the society she represented. Her work ethic and dedication to duty were second to none. She was the longest-serving female monarch in history, the likes of which we will likely never see again. I ask you all that you support this motion, not only to acknowledge the coronation of King Charles III, but also to rename a room in the city in the Queen's honour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Migdal. Councillor Dudek.
Yeah, I won't take up much time, but I will just say I do support the renaming of the Stirling Room to the Queen Elizabeth Room. Basically, obviously, as local government, we're still under the auspices of the Crown, so to speak, and with the current Republic debate that's going on, she will likely be the last full-term serving monarch that we've had through our society. I think it would be nice to recognise her and her legacy in renaming the room, as I think a lot of the residents in the city of Stirling would like to see as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually think what Queen Elizabeth did for the Commonwealth and for the...
Just before you start, I think you want to foreshadow a motion.
Yes, I
so
do.
So just start with that and then you can
Oh,
on to your
okay.
vote.
Well, I do want to, excuse me, foreshadow the motion that's currently on our agenda, which is that the Council approves a high tea to be held in the reception hall to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III on May 2023, but does not include any renaming for the reception hall or any other room in the city of Stirling to the QE2 room.
Thank you. What we can do to fast track that is when we get to the vote, I'll put them separately and that will save it coming to that.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay, so I've got nothing against congratulating the King or some celebration for those that really see this as a follow-on to what has probably been a reign that has been very outstanding. However, it is not Australian. She came into a society that really did have some sort of enthusiasm for royalty, and we also had a great more powerful base of her interference and her knowledge that really went into the legal system of Australia. However, as my fellow councillor has mentioned, that was decreased and it really became more like a figurehead. For her time in power, as a queen, I've got no concerns about that. I think that is the wonderful reign she had, and she certainly was far-sighted and forthright. However, we are Australia, and over 100 years ago, the same sort of thing was purported to, where we were, as Australians, requested to look beyond the shores for giving credits and also giving opportunities to those that were born in the UK. And out of that came the Australian Native Association. And they were the people that from background of colonisation, but they were Australian born because they felt quite disenfranchised with things that were occurring in Australia at the time. They didn't have the rights to elect or choose people that were giving direction in their newly formed Federation of Australia. I see this as more of a backward thing to call the room QE2. I think if you are concerned about the name of Stirling, there are other names that we can use, both Indigenous and Australian names. I understand that Stirling was not Australian. He was the founder of the captain of the fleet that came in to settle in Fremantle and then set up base in what is now Perth. However, I think that to go back to a power that is really past and to rename a room that actually has no relationship with what is happening now, we're looking backwards. 100 years ago, they were looking forwards. They were saying, we've got people in Australia who are those people that can actually do and achieve things, be given positions. We don't have to go back and get the governors from the UK. It took a long time, but we now do have governors that are actually Australian born and they've achieved things in their own nation. I think we also have a different way of processing things through the colonisation. I think we also have an ability to recognise the fact that we do need to address the Aboriginal question that is now before us. But those are things that are pertaining to Australia. They're not pertaining to England, they're not pertaining to the UK, and I really see this as a retrograde step to call this room. And I would say it in context of the fact we've got Queen Elizabeth, what is it, QE2,
Hospital and Elizabeth Quay.
yeah, Elizabeth Quay. You know, we've done, when she was alive, she got a lot of support, a lot of accolades from, I believe, the Government of Western Australia. I don't think we need to continue it. We are the City of Stirling. Let's find someone, if we really don't like the name of the City of Stirling, let's find someone in the city who we can name that room for. Thank you.
Thank you for that debate, Councillor. And Councillor Lagan, I think you indicated.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I withdraw. I was just going to ask for the items to be put separately.
Sure. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm quite supportive of both of these motions. This is a sign of respect to the monarch who reigned for 70-odd years. It'll likely never happen again, as Councillor Migdal has said. I was actually highly supportive of the reception hall being called Queen QE2 room. It's a generic name right now, reception. However, that appeared to be a bridge too far. So the argument at committee, or one of the minor arguments, was that people may well be offended, as in because they, may have come from a country that, weren't treated that well by the British. However, let me say, the reception hall is pretty much the only room used for citizenship ceremonies, as we all know, and they're held really quite regularly. Everyone who becomes an Australian citizen on that night, roughly every 2 weeks, they've actually chosen to come to Australia, which is a nation of the Commonwealth. It's a Commonwealth nation. We would not be offending anybody. People have chosen to come to a Commonwealth nation, and we highly respect the monarch and now her son, who now reigns. So there is no real argument for not having Queen Elizabeth II on the reception hall or any other room.
So, Councillor, let's just be clear, though. The reception hall isn't up for grabs.
No, and you're right. So I certainly have no problem with the naming of QE2 for any of the rooms, and preferably the Stirling room. Thank you.
Thank you. Got you, Councillor Ree. Councillor Ree, your turn.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying I'd like to foreshadow an alternative to number 2 of, instead of the Stirling room, the Anglesey room, please.
Yep, noted.
Thank you. Before I start. I don't have any problem with 1. I think it's good to commemorate, and I think whether or not you agree with the monarchy or not, I think out of respect is still our, what are they called? Head of state. My apologies. Head of state. So I actually think that's a good idea. Would have been good to, but I think I agree with Councillor Migdal. I think it needs to be done on the date, but that's another story. So I don't.
It is being done on the date.
I know, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
No, when the suggestion was to move it to another day, I think you always find people are going to be busy anyway, but I think it's important to be done on the day, so I agree with that. Number 2, I dislike, and I put it on record, the keep on changing the name Stirling everywhere. I think Stirling is part of our history. Whether you came here 5 minutes or 50,000 years ago, we are all migrants to that country. We all came from somewhere else. Some people kept their cultures more than others, and I respect that, and I think it's important to keep your cultures. I think it's important that we respect the people from the past, whatever they did, and for those that didn't do the right thing, we hopefully don't make those mistakes again, and I think that's important. I don't agree with getting rid of the name Stirling. I think the Stirling room is very important. The Anglesey's room, I mean, I'm not quite sure, and looking around the room, I don't know who was even here when they decided back in 2004, I think 2003, that we were named after boats. So I'm not quite sure what was going through people's heads. Whether they thought it was going to sail away like Sydney Harbour, I don't know. But to me, that if you're going to look at what things mean to people, the Pamilya means drinking at the Palmyra Hotel, which is sort of not right, or the yacht race. in
Let's keep on track.
I know, but I'm going on track exactly. The Palmyra doesn't mean anything to me. But I think the history, good or bad, creates us. All of us are made from people all over the world. No one can say they're just nothing because we're a bit of this and bit of that. And that's what makes it around the world. And that's what makes Australia unique. That's what makes Australia one of the best places in the world because we are grounded from a lot of people. I'd just like to also make the comment that I did make the comment earlier when we did discuss when the Queen died, who has done a fantastic service to the world, the way she had to deal with all the countries, so young, husband, children, grandchildren, that's enough to drive anyone nuts, never mind all the other things. So I think she's done Australia very proud. She's always been very respectful of us, so it's disappointing when people don't acknowledge that. But I think too that when she did pass away, which was very sad, that I did make the comment, I hope she stays on the wall somewhere. And I still would like to, if I have to put a motion up to that effect, I will.
Councillor, the intent
But
of this
I'm
was...
just making the comment about the Queen should be respected.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. The intent of this was that whichever room, if it does get up, that the portrait be hung in that room.
Good. On the 2nd of November in 2022, I raised the issue, which I did want to have a motion on, which got told not to, about planting trees to commemorate the Jubilee and that of the Queen. I still think trees are an important reminder, and I think I can't remember, someone from the gallery also said that tonight. I mean, trees, we had lots of people from Mount Lawley here, but trees come up everywhere as a conversation. To me, we say Pemberton.
Councillor, I feel like you're going way off track here.
Well,
if you'd like to say you want to plant a tree as well, we can plant a tree as well.
I did, but it didn't get approved. So what I'm saying is that I do believe that acknowledgement, and that's what we're talking about around this table, it's the acknowledgement of the Queen. And it would be disappointing for people not to acknowledge the Queen. It's how we're acknowledging her.
30 seconds.
And so therefore, I agree with the trees, I agree with the room, but I'm foreshadowing that instead of Stirling room, we have the...
Yep, happy to do that.
Whatever room.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there anyone else who wants to debate this item? If Councillor Hatton?
Yeah, look, I'm not too sure where to start on this, but if you can bear with me, it might take a little bit of time. I fully support the two parts of the motion put forward by Councillor Migdal, motions split up. These motions, and particularly the second part of the motion, absolutely recognise and honour our free democracy. The way we've been led and governed and guided with this outstanding English Westminster system. We are a country led and guided by a very tested form of government over a long period of time, and it has survived a lot of challenges, and we need a constant reminder in some form or fashion of the Westminster system, which was guided by the monarchy under the reign of Queen Elizabeth in her 70 years. Australia is a constitutional monarchy, and it is one of 15 independent, I think, independent countries that remains as such. 70 years ago, or over the 70-year reign of Queen Elizabeth, she historically led through good times and the bad times, and in the future there will be bad times. We need to be reminded of the guidance that has been given to us, I think since 1957 or 54, post-World War II. There are many new migrants to our country, and some of those, or a lot of those migrants, are from countries that do recognise the monarchy, as well as republican countries too. I acknowledge that. Nearly everyone here, I suppose, was born within that 70-year reign. Well, I just make it by a few years. I suppose, looking around, we were all born in that period that the Queen did reign. The Queen last visited Perth for the Heads of State, I think it was. At that time, I believe that they had a barbecue that heralded or attracted 120,000 people on the foreshore of Perth. There is fairly recent evidence that people do think very highly of the late Queen, and I would like to say that it seems to me that the naming of the City of Stirling in the Queen's name would be absolutely appropriate.
I'm sorry, mate.
Not City of Stirling, the Stirling Room, clarification, the Stirling Room. And in saying that, I'll bring up the point that there is absolutely no relationship that I am intend to delve into with relation to renaming the City of Stirling. That is nothing that I'm talking about in this instance. That must be very, very clear. It's the most visited countries that the Queen visited from my research, Canada, I think 26 times in 70 years, Australia 18 times, or 16 or 18 times, and New Zealand around about 10 times. Now that's a pretty high number of visits to our country. She is very connected, or was very connected to our country, and a very important figure. The Queen has been a part of our growth and development, a part of our values, a part of our culture. The culture of Australia and Western Australia is evidently changing, with over 40% of people born overseas, but we need to actually put some context into the history being brought into the future a bit. Councillor Farrelly, I do acknowledge what you were saying about the past, and I do acknowledge that you gave high regard to the Queen, but I do feel that we need that historical evidence in the City of Stirling to actually, just to honour with the name of a room is not a great thing to do, not a great hardship to do. Finally, the monarchy of Australia is Australia's form of government, embodied by the Australian sovereign head of state, and the Australian monarchy is a constitutional monarchy modelled by the Westminster system of parliament, incorporating features unique to the Constitution of Australia. And in saying that, I think that we actually should, as the largest council in Western Australia, representing 230,000 people and 110,000 dwellings, I think that this is highly appropriate, and I'd like to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. And with that, I will, just before I go to Councillor Mcdowell to close debate, I'll take the pressure off it. I do want to reiterate something Councillor Hatton said. If you look at the reasoning for this, it was very clear in the reasoning given by Councillor Mcdowell originally that it was nothing to do with changing the name of the City of Stirling. The reason that room particularly was chosen by Councillor Mcdowell was the fact that it would still be a public-facing room, where the public are invited into that room. And it was also that out of all the rooms, it seemed a bit superfluous, seeing as we're called the City of Stirling. It's pretty obvious where we are. So it was nothing about removing the name or anything like that. There was no intent with any of that part of it. Councillor Mcdowell, to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you took the words right out of my mouth.
That would make a good song, Councillor.
Yeah, I went out of my way to call several of our bordering cities, including Joondalup, Wanneroo, Vincent today, asking them if they had rooms in and around their chambers called the Joondalup room or the Vincent room and no, the answer is no, none of the above. The city has a name, there is enough in that name. This is superfluous in my mind, and that herein lies the reason behind my initial nom to use the Stirling room as the QE2 room. And I think that's about it from me. Thank you. I hope you support it.
Thank you. Good debate, councillors. Councillors, what we will do is we'll obviously put these separately.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just make one last comment with regards to the high tea for the King's coronation? We'll be sure to extend an invite to Millsy and Carl, as indicated by you, sir, when you spoke with them a couple of weeks back.
They were very keen on 6BR if we have one to come along. And I suggest we have cucumber sandwiches as well. Yes. So what I will do is, as indicated previously, let's deal with these separately. So the first one is straightforward, that council approves a high tea to be held in the reception hall to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III. So I'll put that one to the vote. That's all you're voting on. Thank you, councillors. That is unanimous. Good. Number 2, councillors, this will be in a few parts. The first part, obviously, is the motion before us, that the renaming of the Sterling Room occurs. If not, there is a foreshadowed motion by Councillor Ree we will deal with after that. So I will put this motion now for the renaming of the Sterling Room to the QE2 room. Thank you. That motion is lost very closely. So for Dudek, Hatton, Lagan, Migdal, Proud, Sandri and myself. Against Criado, Farrelly, Ferrante, Kristovich, Olo, Perkov, Reid.
Mayor, that's incorrect. I was against. There's something wrong there.
I was against.
So councillors, if we can maybe scrap that vote, let's scrap the vote. If we do it by show of hands, I'm not sure what's going on there. Happy to take the vote if it doesn't reflect what actually happened. So to approve the motion by Councillor Migdal, number 2, I'll ask for a show of hands. All those in favour, please. So 4, we have Councillor Hatton, Lagan, Ferrante, Migdal, Dudek, Deputy Mayor Proud and myself. And against, we have Councillor Ree, Perkov, Sandri, Olo, Thornton, Criado, Farrelly and Kristovich. Yeah, that's all right. That motion is lost.
So,
that's all right. So now, I'm quite capable of doing this part on my own, Councillor Ree. I appreciate your help. So now I will bring a foreshadowed motion. So the foreshadowed motion is moved by Councillor Ree, which is the same motion, only instead of the Sterling Room, it's the Anglesea Room. And I'll ask for a seconder.
one quick thing. Are the staff happy with the Anglesea Room, or they want the Callista or one of the others on?
No, it's entirely up
That's
to you,
right.
Councillor. You've put forward that as a foreshadowed. And there's no problem with that. It's just the name of a room, councillors. Yep. So I'll ask for a seconder for the Anglesea. Councillor Migdal has seconded the Anglesea Room. I will now ask that be put to the vote. So move Councillor Ree, seconded Councillor Migdal, the Anglesea Room be renamed. We'll put that one to the vote and see how we go. Let's just have a look at those. Does that reflect people's votes, though? So, councillors, let's do this one by hand as well. Councillors, I will just say to you, one of the problems with the digital is if you press too early, the screen moves across. And I think it's got me quite a few times. So even though you go to press the green, say, it'll switch across as it changes screen and you press the wrong one. So I'll ask for a show of hands on this one. All those in, if we can wipe the vote for that. We're voting to change the Anglesea Room to the QE2 room. All those in favour, please. Councillor Ree, Councillor Hatton, Councillor Perkov, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Ferrante, Councillor Migdal, Councillor Dudek, and Councillor Olo, Councillor Kristovich and myself. And against, we have Councillor Sandri, Councillor Thornton, Councillor Criado, Councillor Farrelly. Deputy Mayor, you didn't vote on either one. No, you didn't. Okay, sorry, missed it. Okay, no. All right, have we got the 15 there? We're happy with that. That motion is carried. 11-4. Councillors, we'll now move on. We've had enough debate on that one. Cucumber sandwiches all round. Councillors, I will ask now, I'll go to Councillor Hatton and I'll ask you to move the balance of the committee. Councillors, can I have some quiet, please? Councillors. We have a little bit of decorum. Councillors, we're there. Councillor Hatton, if you'd like to move the balance of the reports with the exception of 12.1, 8.3, which will be dealt with in confidential because it's going to be hard to do anything on that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the balance of the committee items to be their committee recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Perkov, and I'll put that to the vote. Thanks, councillors. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. So, members of the gallery and those watching via the live stream at home, please note the Community and Resource Committee recommendations have all been adopted by exception resolution, with the exception of the 12.1, 8.3, the waste to energy item. We'll now move on to direct to council items, starting with item 13.1. The first one of those are Brighton Beach Access Path construction on page 53. Do I have mover of a motion? Councillor Farrelly.
Move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Which is reopening the path. Thank you. And is there a second for that motion? Councillor Kristovich. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you. I will put that one to the vote. Easy. That is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. 13.2, the Tamala Park Regional Council Review of Establishment Agreement. Do I have a mover of a motion? Thanks, Councillor Sandri.
Officer recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Perkov, thank you. Is there a question? Is it for debate or just a question?
Ask about the probity auditor before, because we had a probity order for the MRC, and I did ask if we had one and if we had the report. I can't find it, so does that mean that we didn't?
I don't understand why you need a probity report on this, councillor.
I think that going forward, considering some of the issues that have created in the past, that it would have been good for a probity. If that means an independent auditor looks at it to make sure that this agreement is in the best interest of the city as well.
Thank you.
That's all.
Yeah, I don't think there is one. I can get Mr Blanchard to provide comment, but these are fairly, it's fairly basic changes to the agreement. It wasn't substantial. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was going to make that point, that there aren't substantial changes to the agreement, and if we were going to contemplate an audit, that would be driven through the audit committee.
None of this changes the intent of the council. It was merely some changes to reflect how it's currently operating and some names. And yep. If there's no one opposed, I will put that. Move Councillor Sandri, seconded Councillor Perkov. Thanks, councillors. 13.3 milestone event application, Naval Association of Australia, Perth North subsection. Mover of the motion, Deputy Mayor Proud. Thanks, just your mic.
As written.
Thank you. Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Farrelly. Is anyone opposed? If not, can I just, with your indulgence, just ask a couple of quick questions? It's only because I am aware they actually are, I believe they're also having a small function, so it's following a council workshop, but there is a small function. Is the catering included in this, or is this a separate grant to provide for things like the marquee, or do we have anyone who's got that information?
If Mr Castro could answer the question, please.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I just...
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. That amount covers everything.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And the other question is, and for those councillors who don't know, this came about because obviously the works across the road means they can't run there in the Stirling Gardens, the service. I did hear today something, I just want to clarify through the officers, maybe Mr Murphy, I'm not sure if you don't know if you can find out, but the intent was that they would use the flagpoles out the front. Is that occurring, that they're using our flagpoles, or have we said they have to bring their own flagpoles?
I don't know the answer, but I will find out and let you know.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I needed. Happy with that. Now I'll put that to the vote. I think we've got one to go, and it's Councillor Ferrante. That's... No, Councillor Sanders. So that's all right. So that is unanimous, noting that Councillor Sandri is not in the room. Apologies, Councillor Ferrante. It was a reaction, and you can't blame me. It's always last. I normally don't even have to look at the list. I could just... I'll go to item 14.1. Proposed notice of motion by Councillor Migdale on bus stop upgrades. Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the notice of motion recommendation per the agenda, page 111, that a report is presented to Council outlining the feasibility of providing all bus stops within the city with a seat and a tree in close proximity to the bus stop in order to provide future shade and the ability to sit for those who require it. I so move.
Great motion. Councillor Ferrante has seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? A question?
If I could have included in the report, because I put up a motion years ago with regard to the shelters and also the upgrades of bus stops, and the report that came back said one a bit like this one, that we don't control all of them, and there was only so many we could do, and I asked that we could do it as a program. So could we have in the report, which they had advised previously, that there is a program? If it's disappeared, could we have that in there and my motion, please?
Sure, and I'm happy to take that offline and explain to the Director some of the past history with this one. I think there's been a lot of history for years as bus stops are upgraded through the city. Councillors have requested, why are you taking a seat and perfectly good a shade away? We're always told that it's not necessarily the cities, it's between PTA and us. The reality is bus stops are upgraded, but the community don't see them as an upgrade, they see them as downgrade because we take away all their shelter and accessibility and give them some new paving. So it's a good motion. Noted, Councillor Reid, make sure all that history is in there. Yes. Did I put that to the vote? Okay, put that to the vote, councillors. That is unanimous, noting that Councillor Sandri is back in the room, so it's 15. Item 14.2, proposed notice of motion, Councillor Migdale.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. Just have to go to the page. I'd like to move the notice of motion per the agenda, proposed notice of motion, on page 113, please. And that is that a review be undertaken of the city's street tree and reserves tree policy. Now, I understand that there is a similar motion, different intent coming up next. Can I just clarify the intent by reading the details, or rather the background, if that's possible, with your indulgence, Mr Mayor?
Yep.
So it just basically lets you know when the last review took place in 2020, but the request is that as part of this review, it includes consideration of the planting of 1 tree per lot frontage unless additional trees are requested within the verge in response to community feedback. I so move.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there a seconder for this motion for review? Councillor Sandri is seconded. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that one to the vote. Sorry, it's already gone to the vote. You're happy to take it offline and get a question off you. Sorry, Councillor. But yeah, the next one's similar. You'll be able to ask a question. Councillors, that is unanimous. 14.3, proposed notice of motion. Councillor Kristovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the motion, notice of motion recommendation on page 115, which reads that a report be presented to the council meeting to be held 9th of May 2023, outlining the city's urban forest tree initiatives, including tree canopy cover trends over the past 10 years and predictions into the future, and whether the city is likely to achieve the target of 18% by 2040. Number 2, that a report be presented to the Community and Resources Committee meeting to be held on the 25th of July 2023, outlining A, the future of the Million Trees program post the target year date of 2025, B, what trees and planning policies, programs, actions, city organisation-wide capabilities are needed to reach the targets on or prior to 2030 and 2040, and C, exploring opportunities to partner with the state government and its departments and commissions to give focus to lifting the city's urban forest in future decades.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor Sandri, sorry, you wish to second that with...
Yeah, if possible, and if the mover...
Councillor, you can take a seat. You've got your motion up.
If the mover is willing to add a point D, if we can achieve the target just in publicly owned land and consider innovative ways to increase our tree canopy on that land.
Councillor, are you happy to accept that as point D?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of the whole thing, but yeah, you can put it as an extra point, no problem.
Sure. And if there's no one opposed, I think Councillor Reid's got a question we missed in the last one. Let's probably get it out in this one.
Question was, with the city street tree and reserve tree policy, wouldn't that be sort of incorporated into the city urban forest initiative, because they are synonymous with one another, so doesn't one negate the other? Because when you're actually looking at the tree policy, that should be addressed in this.
They are different initiatives, but I'm sure officers will take that on board. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a workshop in between this and whether they come back as one motion. However it happens, that can be taken offline, but I think the intent's there. Councillors, I'll put that one to the vote. Councillor Sandri and Councillor Farrelly, I think it is. We've got a vote to come in. Okay, I'm still missing one. There it is. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Thank you. Councillors, Mr Murphy also just said wishes you all a happy Easter. Thanks for spoiling his. I'll now go to item 15, which is notice a motion for consideration at the next meeting. Councillors, do you have any? Councillor Lagan, you've got a motion?
Yes, I do. I'm not sure if the officers have got it, the wording. If they haven't, I'll have to read it out.
If you gave it to them, they'll have it.
Give it to them.
Yep, it's coming up.
Yep. Beautiful. Listen to this one. That in response to item 5.1, page 9 of the Council Agenda, 4th of April 2023, the Mayor writes to the Senior Officer, Mirrabooka Police, seeking the police, it should be stopped, speed checking on Avocado Drive, Dianella be undertaken as soon as possible, and B, that police, again, update the city as to vehicle speeding incidents and any recorded verification of hooning vehicles on Avocado Drive, Dianella. The reason is that in the petition and in the letter, the petitioner and the letter talked about hooning vehicles. There is legislation in Western Australia to seize vehicles that are hooning if they are recognised as doing that. It appears as though there may be one or two local vehicles doing just that, and the capturing of those vehicles is the job of West Australian Police, not necessarily the job of Council first.
Thank you. I'm not sure what your motion's actually meant to read, so can we just...
Some more work on the wording.
So I'd get rid of the stop and spots. I don't think they're needed.
No, that wasn't meant to be there.
Yeah, I think we can work on the wording and clarify that for what the actual motion is by the time.
I have a second one.
Your second one?
Yes, so I have a second notice of motion that the City of Stirling standing orders and meeting procedural local law be changed to remove the requirement for elected members to stand when speaking at council meetings, and that a report be presented to council at the next full council meeting.
Let me just check with Mr Blanchard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As part of the local government legislative amendment bill that's currently before Parliament, local governments will have mandatory uniform meeting procedures. It is, in my view, a pointless exercise to amend our meeting procedures local law for that purpose. If, in the interim, Council wishes to not stand when speaking at Council, it will be simply a matter of moving to suspend that standing orders for the duration of the meeting, and we can implement that from the next council meeting if council wishes.
Yeah, thank you. Just as a exercise, given that some other legislative bodies don't do that.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it has. Exactly. Leave him alone. He's tired.
So, Mr Mayor...
Happy to leave it in for now and we can deal with it. Thanks.
So, Mr.
I
Mayor,
believe Councillor Criado first.
Just, can we say what's the reasoning for that one from
No,
Mr.
we don't.
Councillor
I don't think we
Lagan?
need it now. We're just putting, all we're doing is putting noms for. There's plenty of time for all that. Councillor Criado first, then I have Councillor Farrelly.
Okay, so I will stand.
Thank you, Councillor Criado.
Okay, so that a report be presented to Council considering a trial of a multifaceted, locally led community safety initiative within the Nollamara and Westminster neighbourhoods over a 6-month period in response to escalating antisocial and criminal behaviour.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Farrelly, you have a motion.
Yes, I haven't actually given the motion to anyone. May not be the right place, but I would
Sorry,
like
I'll just get Councillor
to have
Criado
a
to turn your microphone off. Councillor Criado, thanks.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
Yes.
Regarding the popularity of the Surf Lifesaving Carnival, I would actually request that the way it was done was reviewed and a report of the Surf Lifesaving Carnival at Scarborough and Trigg over the last 8 days, 9 days? 9 days. In particular, its impact on local commercial enterprise, its reach in the media, and the...
That's already occurring, Councillor.
Is it?
Yeah.
So that's, okay. Yeah.
No, it is a good point though, and I think it was brought up, I think recently councillors did offer congratulations to the team on the report that came. I think it was the Wham Fest, was it? The music festival. And I think the expectation for such a significant investment in the event is that that similar sort of report is going to come. Councillors, if there's no other indication, we'll go on to 16 questions by members of which due notice have been given. Councillor Reid, those questions are there and you will get the response, and I'll ensure that when they come, the full response will be in the minutes. You're welcome. 17, new business of an urgent nature. It's not really, but Councillor Migdal has a motion. Before we can consider your motion, it's not urgent, so what I'll ask is that we can please have a mover and a seconder to suspend standing orders so we can deal with it. Move Councillor Migdal, seconder Councillor Olo. Just a vote to suspend standing orders. That is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. So I will now ask Councillor Migdal what your motion is.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I can't see that far away. Can we move the screen down a little bit?
It's the same as what you've got.
The city donates $10,000 to Food Bank and $5,000 to the Stirling Women's Centre. Would you like me to read the reason?
Yes, because it's going to get debated, I think.
Certainly. Yeah, that's good. Food stress and the stress of the current economy on families is impacting on more of our residents every day. The Easter holiday period, as all holidays, can cause extra pressure and stress to those in our community who are doing it tough. This donation will assist to alleviate some of the pressure that is currently being felt by our residents. The city must continue to be mindful and help whenever and however it can. I so move.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Reid has seconded. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. That motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I just say Happy Easter?
Yes, you may.
Even happier.
Thank you, and thanks for your indulgence in bringing that forward. Sometimes we get the notice of motions that the timing, obviously, one, it doesn't need a lot of information to support it, and secondly, the timing was critical with Easter, so I appreciate that. I will now just do a check. We won't reinstate standing orders, Councillor Lagan, just to keep you happy for the rest of the meeting, as we're about to go behind closed doors. So I will ask councillors, is there a mover to go behind closed doors? Move Councillor Ferrante, seconded Councillor Olo. A show of hands to go behind closed doors, councillors. I do need councillors to concentrate and put their arm up. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. So for those viewers at home, you will be turned off your live stream, so we wish you good night. I don't think we'll be turning